Good morning. Before we get too deep into 2018, let's look back for a moment at last year with a perfectly clear view of who and what made a significant impact on Michigan. Picking the WXYZ Channel 7 Newsmaker of the Year is never easy. The list of candidates comes from the world of sports, the political arena, social and history advocates, as well as the business community. But one individual and the organization he leads rose above the field of finalists to capture our attention the most. His name, Gerry Anderson, chairman and CEO of the corporate giant DTE Energy. Why? Well, sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and follow us to his downtown Detroit executive office, and we'll show you why he has become the latest of a very prestigious annual tradition that dates back to 1995. It's Sunday, January the 28th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is a Spotlight on the News 2017 Newsmaker of the Year special. Let me take you back to last October. You got an honor from the Goodfellows, well-established organization here that has honored a lot of people. You got the Ed McNamara Award. You've gotten a lot of awards. Why was that particular one special? And I'm hearing it was pretty special to you.
Yeah, that meant a lot to me. I was really honored and flattered to receive that one. And you know, it's a great organization. There was quite a while I didn't know much about it, but in the late 1990s, I was assigned an executive assistant. Her name was Cheryl Gonda.
Okay.
We worked together for 17 years. And first year we worked together around Thanksgiving, I started to see these dolls pile up on her desk and bookshelves and filing cabinets, and eventually by the hundreds. And at some point I stopped and said, Cheryl, what is going on with the dolls? And it was then that she told me about the mission of the Goodfellows, that no child should go without Christmas because of need. And she also told me that there were hundreds of employees at DTE who pitched in to prepare every year over 1,200 dolls to give to the Goodfellows for the cause. Told me a lot about the people at my company, but I know this happens all over the city. So it told me a lot about the heart of the citizens of Detroit. And an organization like the Goodfellows, with that mission, I couldn't have been more proud to receive their award.
You have your responsibilities here at DTE Energy, which are considerable. But now you've taken on some other hats around this city. And one of them is chairman of the Detroit Economic Club. Organization goes back to, I guess, 1934. And you're taking the baton, took the baton from Bill Ford, who was in that position for about 12 years. Why did you take it, along with everything else you have to do?
You know, Bill called me last year. As you said, he led the organization for a long time. He led it through some tough times.
He did.
So, you know, in the economic crisis, they were nearly insolvent, the Detroit Economic Club. And Bill rallied leadership to make sure that an organization that had been important and around for so long did not go by the wayside. So he kept them sound and then grew them back to a really vital organization. But after his long run, he decided it was time to turn over leadership. And you know, it's such an important organization in our community. So the Detroit Economic Club invites in speakers from all over the country who come in to share their knowledge, their experience with us. But at the same time, it's a vehicle for us to tell them about the exciting recovery underway in Detroit, and for them to travel back out to the rest of the country and spread the word. So realizing how important a role the organization plays, when Bill asked, I felt it was on me to step up and help out.
What do you want to see happen under your tenure? What kind of stamp do you want to put on this organization?
I've talked to Steve Gregorian, the leader, that we can always do better. So I'd like us to focus on continuing to elevate our game with the quality of people we bring in. But another important part of the Economic Club is working with young leaders. Young leaders who are out in business and young leaders who are preparing to get into
next generation.
Next generation. And they've done a good job of growing that program, but I would love to work on continuing to make that more more and more important part of the mission of the organization.
Regional CEO group. What is that group? Why did you kind of pull that together, and what are you guys doing?
Well, you know, when the
Guys and gals.
And when the city really started to get its legs again and recover, the private sector was part of that for sure. But I began to sense that we just weren't coordinated enough in the way that we were putting our shoulder behind the city's recovery. There was no forum where the senior leaders of the largest corporations in the region could come together and talk about how we coordinated our activities and coordinated our support for important things. And so I began to talk to those leaders, and we pulled together a group of about a dozen leaders of very large corporations. We also, by the way, pulled in the leaders of the two largest charitable foundations. We get together quarterly.
Okay.
It's not a business agenda, so it's not about how can we make the business climate better so much. It's really a community agenda. How can we help the mayor? How can we help the other leaders in the region? How can we further the recovery of the region? And maybe most importantly, how can we broaden the recovery? Because I have a viewpoint that this city needs to achieve what so many other cities have failed to achieve. Most cities recover, but it isn't a broad recovery. It doesn't touch all levels of the community.
You're concerned about the long haul, not the short.
Correct. I think in the long haul, the ultimate goal is that we continue to recover, but it broadens and ultimately reestablishes a thriving middle class in Detroit.
I know that auto insurance reform is something that you all have talked about. I would imagine transit, especially after not landing Amazon, has come up as part of the conversation.
It has come up as part of the conversation. So, look, I don't speak for that group all the time, but I'll speak for myself.
Okay.
This region needs to get its act together on transit. We stand out as a region that's weak, and I understand that we are a varied region, but
Sure.
we need to find a way to come together and realize that if we nail that issue, it'll be better for the region overall. And when it's better for the region overall, opportunities like Amazon have a better probability of coming here, which is good for everybody. So it's certainly an issue that I'm focusing time and energy on, and would really love our political leaders to find a way to move on.
All right, we're going to take a little break here. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the key things that you're doing in this city, some of them very, very visible. One of them, Beacon Park. Beacon Park got a lot of publicity last year. Go back with me a little bit on the vision and how it all came together and why it was so important.
You know, for many years, I looked out that window in this office down on a industrial parcel surrounded by a gravel parking lot and barbed wire directly adjacent to our headquarters. And I would walk in and stare down at that, and beyond it was a sea of vacant land, and think someday there's going to be a much better use for this. I just didn't know when someday would be. But then I took a trip to Boston to visit some of our largest investors, and I had a lunch break and was walking through the city and landed in Leventhal Park, which is a beautiful, vibrant park right in the heart of Boston. Wonderful design. And I sat there and watched the hum of activity, and I thought, this is what we should do with that parcel of land. I learned, by the way, that it had been funded, Leventhal Park had been, by the businesses around it. And so we hatched the idea of using that piece of land as a park that could begin to push development out the Grand River corridor. And so we invited the firm that designed Leventhal Park to pair up with some local Detroit designers, and the result is Beacon Park. And I have to tell you, I've been encouraged, overwhelmed by the level of activity in its first few months. So we opened it in August. We've had 250,000 visitors between August and December of last year, and a projected 1 million visitors this year across a whole array of things that will be scheduled there. We kind of made it up as we went, but it's turned out really well. And to be honest, our
Has it exceeded your expectation?
I have to say it has. You know, as I said, the idea evolved as we worked our way through it, but I came here for a charity benefit a few weeks back, and I walked in on the ugly sweater contest with 2,000 people lined up to get in that park, and I thought to myself, who on earth would have thought this would be happening at Beacon Park? So it's been a great place for citizens of Detroit to gather and have fun, and we're really proud to be part of it.
A few years ago, Dan Gilbert was sitting where you're sitting when he was Newsmaker of the Year, and he talked about his Big Bang Theory. And I asked him, I said, do you want to own everything downtown? He said, I really don't. He said, I just want to create corporate competition, friendly competition, so that we're really competing against each other to make this city the great city it can be.
Well, I don't know if I'd say it was competition that spurred us, but you do watch other business leaders in the area. Detroit is blessed to have leaders who really care about this city. So Gilbert cares, Ilitch cares, Roger Penske cares about this city and its recovery. And from my perspective, when I'm in a position like this, it's on me to be part of that. It's my responsibility. So yes, we were looking for ways that we could contribute. When Chris Ilitch became clear on District Detroit and Little Caesars Arena, we saw, for example, Beacon Park and developing the area around our headquarters as the perfect opportunity to complement that. And I think between the two, the area near us is really ready to explode. And what I hear in terms of follow-on development, both business and residential, that's going to fill that sea of vacant land that I used to look at, is really exciting.
Talk to me about Randolph School, vocational school in Detroit that you've already sunk, I think, what, about $10 million into?
So I love the focus on vocational education, and I will tell you why. So I just mentioned Little Caesars Arena. One of the really exciting things in our city this past year was the opening of that, but it was a huge construction project too, $900 million. And yet the reality is when the steel started to rise out of the ground on Little Caesars Arena, there were 61 members of Ironworkers Local 125 out of their 1,500 members who were from the city of Detroit. That's under 5%. And it was the same for plumbers and same for electricians. And so a massive construction project went by without having the ability to attract qualified Detroiters because they weren't there. At the same time, Detroit Public Schools' flagship training center for the construction trades, Randolph School, was physically dilapidated and in disrepair, and its student population had fallen from 700 at its peak to 100. Now you might ask, how could that be? How could we have a construction trade school dilapidated at a time when the region's short construction workers and projects like Little Caesars can't find them? And so quite a few of us asked that question last year, and the city of Detroit, Detroit Public Schools, a number of companies, including my own, several charitable foundations linked arms and said, we're going to turn this around. This is not right. And we raised $10 million, as you mentioned. We used that to refurbish the school. It looks beautiful now. We developed new curricula. We hired new faculty, and the school's launched. The student population has already tripled from 100 to 300. Detroit Public Schools in the city are working now to attract, in addition, 300 adult students. That'll happen in the near term. So we will have 600 Detroiters there being prepared to participate in future construction projects. So when steel rises out of the ground and the foundations are laid for perhaps the Hudson's Tower, we'll have Detroiters ready to participate and put the foundations under their own future.
When I walked in your building, looked like very bright young people, very personable, which leads me into the next question of jobs and summer jobs and young people who want a chance to be able to make a difference and reach their potential. Your organization has been very involved in trying to provide that first degree of access. How important is that to you?
We had some 1,200 young people with us this past summer, and I think it's easy to forget just how important those summer jobs are in building your understanding of what it means to work and what the workplace looks like. We all had them, but we still have a serious youth unemployment problem in our city. There are many contributors, but one of them is that many of those youth never have a series of summer jobs to help prepare them for the workplace. So we had a summer student here a few years back who came from a pretty tough background. His name was Zante. I ran into him and asked him, "So what have you learned this summer?" And he stopped for a minute and then said, "You know, what I learned is that there's a lot of things out there that are jobs that I never even knew existed." You see, he had no map of the workplace and no sense for what it meant to participate in it. And we can give him that. Mayor Duggan has ramped up Grow Detroit's young talent. Got 8,000 young people each summer participating. It's a great program. But now the private sector needs to jump in to help expand it. And I think take the later years of that program and really start to build in skills for the young people. We need to have an ethic, I think, in our city, if we're going to broaden this recovery, that everybody's in. And when it comes to educating young people and giving young people summer jobs, everybody's in. Whether you can take 2 young people, 200, or like us, 1,000. We all got to be part of it.
All right, we need to sneak another little break in here. When we come back, I want to talk about these awards that are all around you and how that relates to your employees and the larger society out there. We'll be right back with Gerry Anderson, our Newsmaker of the Year. Employee engagement has a lot to do with these awards. I see Gallup Awards, I see J.D. Power Awards, and you've gotten some of these awards consistently. What's the secret?
I think the secret's focus. So I often get asked, and it's usually by my employees, what makes you proudest? And my answer is always the same. What makes me proudest is when somebody at this company says to me, "I love working here." You know, the way I see it, I've got 10,000 employees. They work 8 to 10 hours a day. So 80 to 100,000 hours a day are being spent in my company by people. And if they love it and they're proud of it and are energized, that's fantastic. But if the opposite is true, shame on me. But I have to tell you, 10 years ago, the average worker didn't feel great about being at DTE. Back then, we showed up in the bottom 25% consistently, and it showed on our people's faces. So we went to work on it. We focused on it. And I'm proud to say that last year, Gallup measured us in the top 4% in their national and worldwide database in terms of employee experience. So, you know, we've gotten to pretty elite levels. And it shows on our employees' faces. They behave differently. They look different.
You're in a business that is all about delivering power. Power in an environment and where we hear a lot about climate change. What is it that DTE Energy is doing on that very important topic, but oftentimes very controversial topic?
Yeah, climate change, I think, is one of the defining public policy issues of our day. And as an energy company, of course, we're right in the middle of it. So I pulled my leadership team together a number of years back and said, push aside the business for a minute. Let's talk about our responsibilities. What do we think about this issue, and what responsibility do we have to address it? And as a leadership team, we came to the conclusion it's a serious issue and we need to be part of solving it. And so we went to work. We began using our engineering and financial minds to model what was possible. And what we learned in the process is that there doesn't have to be a sucker's choice between the health of the environment and the health of the economy. I think the evolution of renewable technologies, the abundance of high efficiency natural gas in our country now will allow us to sharply reduce carbon and at the same time keep bills affordable. So in order to exert some leadership, we came out last year and committed as a company that we're going to reduce our carbon emissions by more than 80%. So that's the target scientists have put out there. We're going to do that before 2050, the year they've put out there, and we put in markers along the way.
When President Trump last year pulled this country out of the Paris Agreement, what did Gerry Anderson get up out of bed that morning and say to his wife?
That was a mistake. I think that it's a vital public policy issue and we should be in the dialogue. Doesn't mean we need to agree with everything the international community does, but I think we should be in the mix. I'll tell you something else. The sad thing is we're actually doing more than most of the countries who are part of that accord. My industry is down approaching 25% in terms of carbon emissions. That's more than a lot of the European countries who are critiquing our country. And so we have this strange dynamic of taking the butt of the criticism, but actually we're making a lot of progress, for example, in the energy industry.
Do you worry about how other countries may now view the United States and our policies on this very important topic?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that they do view us as having stepped out of a critical conversation. And my only consolation is that we continue to make progress. We as a company do, we as a country will.
Coming up, Gerry Anderson takes us into the world of sports. Notre Dame versus Michigan. We'll be right back. Governor Snyder, in his State of the State, towards the end, talked about political civility. So what's your sense of where America is right now and what you'd like to see?
I think the governor is exactly right. I think at the state level we've made some good progress, but we need to raise our game at the federal level.
Final question. I know that you're a sports fan, and I also noted that you went to Notre Dame and you also did graduate work at the University of Michigan. So when Notre Dame plays Michigan, who in the heck do you root for?
Well, you know, I entered Notre Dame when I was 18. 18's an impressionable time. So the undergrad grabs your heart. So in that game I root for Notre Dame, and every other day of the year I root for Michigan.
Go Irish, right?
Thank you, sir.
Gerry Anderson, thanks for sitting down with us. Congratulations on being our Channel 7 WXYZ 2017 Newsmaker of the Year. Gerry Anderson, our thanks to him and his team at DTE Energy for their help on this very special interview. I'm Chuck Stokes. Have a great week.